Now, let's get more on the tax plans unveiled by the Chancellor this morning. Alistair Darling has raised the threshold of inheritance tax to £600,000 for married couples. He also hopes to close tax loopholes enjoyed by heads of private equity firms.
Well, with us here in the studio is Matt Pitcher, who's an inheritance tax expert, and he's going to discuss some of the emails and the texts that you've been sending in with lots and lots of questions. Let's just give you a flavour. John from Littlehampton, for example, the £600,000 inheritance tax relief was already available to any married couple prepared to make the simple adjustment to their wills. And another, David from Cheam, says the same, really, that for married couples, anyone who did a bit of elementary tax planning, this was already available. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. This is no increase actually on what's already available at the moment. What it does do, to be fair, is it simplifies the process. So for people perhaps who couldn't afford to or weren't able to get the advice from a solicitor, then this automatically brings in that tax saving. So there is a benefit, but it's not a huge benefit. This is not an increase.
And would many people have done that elementary planning in their wills? I mean, what sort of proportion of people are we talking about?
Well, certainly all of our clients would have done it, because it's something that we've been recommending for the past 20 years, and it's fairly basic will planning. So hopefully anyone with a good solicitor would have had this in place already. Right. So for a lot of people, this is not going to be a big change. What it does do for people who are in the 350 perhaps to 450 category in terms of their estates, it just simplifies things. It removes the need to do that kind of planning.
OK, I mean, lots of questions being raised as a result of what's been announced today. Mark from London says, my mother, who's in her 30s, will be taxed because my father died over 30 years ago. He fought in the Second World War, and now my mother will not be able to leave her assets over £300,000 to her grandchildren. This is very unfair. Is that right, actually? Because this is retrospective, isn't it? Is there a time limit?
Well, I mean, if you just reading the letter of the announcement, actually there's no time limit at all. So potentially, interestingly, it could go back for 30 years, which would be an interesting point, because actually 30 years ago, of course, this tax didn't apply. So actually it's bringing into force today an allowance which was never available originally. So it's quite a radical change in that sense, that it's being backdated with unlimited effect.
Single people emailing us saying, for example, Mark Smith from Llandudno, I'm very angry. Yet again, I am penalised by politicians targeted because of my status. Why should my child suffer more inheritance tax from my hard work merely because I am single? There would be outrage if any other minority was treated this way.
Yes, it's probably slightly unfair. I mean, what we're talking about here is £300,000 per person that you're allowed to pass on. So for couples, it's simply £300,000 for each of the person in the partnership. So this is the same as a single person, right. Really. There's no disadvantage to single people. Okay. To be clear, though, this only applies obviously to spouse or civil partnerships. So this is perhaps another incentive for people who are in partnerships to get married.
But what about people who are divorced? Lots of texts on this. B. Monday from Harrow asks, will divorced people be treated in the same way as widowers or widows for inheritance tax? Can we now leave our children £600,000 before having to pay any inheritance tax? My understanding is that's not going to be the case, and they've been very strict about this, to say that if you remarry, you can only take on board one of the nil rate bands of £300,000, so you can't keep marrying and keep accruing £300,000 allowances as you go. So this is just a one-off opportunity if you're married or you're an existing widower.
I mean, you deal in inheritance tax all the time. I mean, some people might think it's quite a narrow field, but it's suddenly become a pretty explosive political issue, hasn't it, with both Conservatives and Labour producing these counter-proposals. Yes, it's interesting. This is something that's been on people's minds for years as house prices have increased all over the country, but particularly in the south and the southeast. And all of a sudden the politicians have realised actually how much this matters to people and how fundamental it is. And it's good to see that they're actually starting to do something about it. But really we need an increase in that nil rate band allowance rather than just allowing couples to pass their allowance on. That's fundamentally what we need. Interestingly, there is a bit of detail in there that says they may raise the nil rate band faster than they have done in the past. They might link it to the rise in house prices. Now that's actually probably more significant for most people than the headline of this main proposal. So that certainly could be interesting. So just explain the differences between the Tory proposals
and what the government's done today? How different are they?
It's quite fundamental. The Conservative Party are suggesting that they'd raise the nil rate band to £1 million, which would immediately take all but the very, very wealthy out of the trap of inheritance tax. This change by the Chancellor is not anywhere near as generous. All it's doing is making it simpler for those people who have smaller estates but that do fall over that 300 limit and are in a married couple or a civil partnership. It's making it easier for those people. So it's not actually giving anything away, really, this budget change.
Is it going to mean less work for you? You aren't going to need so much advice from you from now.
Certainly our clients, their estates generally are over 600,000 anyway, so they are still going to need to plan unless we have some change of political party in the future.
Okay, Matt Pitcher, thank you very much indeed for coming in and answering the viewers' emails and texts. Hope that clears up some of your questions at least. And there were also big changes, of course, today to capital gains tax. And to explain some of that, here's Sarah.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, the Chancellor's promise to reform the capital gains tax system will result in both winners and losers. And one tax expert explained to me how it would work.
The first thing to say, there's quite a simplification here. We're sweeping away taper relief, which many have heard about and few understand, although it keeps people like me going, which is sad if it's going. But the winners are people who currently don't get much taper relief. Maybe they're selling something like a second property or a buy-to-let, paying rates somewhere between 24% and 40%. Their rate potentially comes down to 18%. The losers are those who are currently getting the business asset taper. That means shares in your employer, your own business, of course the private equity perhaps. They potentially see their rate going up from 10% to 18%. And that's quite a hike. Overall, it looks as if this will raise money, although of course remains to be seen what the fine print comes through as.